serving you a dose of wisdom and humor with a dash of radiance. Welcome to Biscuits and Sunshine with your hosts, Callie and Landra. Hey y'all, pull up a seat at our table for your next serving of Biscuits and Sunshine. I'm Callie.
And I'm Landra. It makes me hella happy to have you here with us. We're recording this from Distance 4 Audio Studios in Athens, Greece. Welcome to episode 17, Deka Epta. Pame, let's go.
Hey Filimu, how are you?
I'm good. Tiganis, how are you?
I'm good. This week, the streets of Athens are so uneven. About a week ago, I took a little fall, right? I thought I caught myself on my hands pretty well. But this week, my knee has been really hurting. And it has brought to mind the fact that every day we're getting a little bit older. We're getting a little bit more inflexible, unless we're trying, actively to do that. I have to say, successfully sort of working out 3 days a week, and I feel very strong in my body. But this injury in air quotes, has reminded me like it's not just about strength. Like there's inflammation. Anyway, I've just been thinking a lot about aging, and I feel like it's probably a valuable topic to talk about.
Oh, friend, I'm so sorry that happened to you.
Thanks.
And I get it, right? We just go along our days and every day we are aging.
Yeah.
And we think of it just sometimes as a number or when our birthday comes around. But when things like that happen unexpectedly, it really gets us kind of thinking like, oh, yeah.
You take for granted getting out of bed with no pain or little pain or walking to get a cup of coffee. Like one day last week, like I really could barely sort of put a lot of pressure on my leg. It looked like I was severely injured walking down the street because it was just so inflamed and so tight.
Oh,
anyway, clearly I've been thinking a lot about age.
Yeah, my goodness. Well, and I can empathize.
Yeah.
With you when it comes to my shoulder thing of like, something that all of a sudden one day, it can be a fine line. I mean, you with falling, that of course was an incident, but sometimes it could just be over time.
Mm-hmm.
And we can sometimes ignore it, like I did for so long until I couldn't ignore it anymore. And then I had to figure out what was going on and kind of, So I hear you.
I think we both share the mentality that aging is a blessing because the alternative to aging is not aging at all. And we love life. And that love of life and that enjoyment of life, I think is what's going to carry us through into our old age to very happy lives. End of story. But I do think conversation needs to be had just around the process of aging maybe and how we feel about it.
Yeah, I don't think it's something in our society we talk enough about. I know in preparation for this episode, you and I kept really getting pulled into like the external things about aging, like, with what we can be seeing on our bodies. But it's interesting though, right? It's so much more than that. And I also think that the other thing you and I share a lot of is how seeing age is just a number, but there is a reality, though, too. Things are shifting and moving and changing. And like you said, the alternative to aging is no longer being here.
Yeah.
So how do we, we talked earlier in an episode about fall and letting go.
Mm-hmm.
How do we shift and move and change with the aging process and not overly attaching to maybe how we want it to be or how we used to be? Because I think that's where that discomfort can come in, or we can get really upset about aging, I find.
Embracing
mentally.
the moment.
Yeah, embracing it. And it's not always easy. I think that's why we're talking about it.
Yeah. I read a really interesting article last year, an interview with Courtney Cox, most famously known for her role in Friends, where she basically said that the pressure to stay young in the industry, which I think now we can sort of say is everywhere, given media and all of that, the pressure is so high to do Botox and fillers and make sure that you don't look old. She said for her, it's just like one procedure. It's one thing. But to the outside world, her face was changing very rapidly, but she couldn't recognize it. She couldn't see the changes on her own face, almost to the point where she forgot what she looked like.
Wow.
what is the message that we're receiving that is so strong and has such a strong hold on us that we forget our own faces?
Mm.
To me, that sort of like blew my mind and helped me look at the pressure that women face specifically, and men face it too. Let's say everybody has this, but women more so maybe. That
Not
pressure,
maybe, definitely.
yeah, that pressure is outrageous. To
Yeah.
forget what you look like, to forget, okay, well, I can just put more here, here, and here, and then, oh, I don't even recognize who I am in the mirror anymore.
Wow, yeah. It's interesting. I think back to the days of being a teenager, and like I used to really love and was interested in modeling, and I was getting all these magazines. So these messages are not new. They've been around for a long time. They might feel like they're more rapidly coming towards us with media because we're walking around with little mini computers in our pockets where we didn't back in the day.
And you were just talking about like doing the side-by-side photographs. Every single moment of our lives is documented.
Yeah.
So we can see year to year, month to month, decade to decade, all of the changes. It's not like, oh, I think back in the day I looked like this. It's like, no, I know. And I can count the wrinkles. I can count the receding hairline. I can see these things. It makes a difference. Overall, they say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And I think we want people to behold themselves as beautiful. That's why it pisses me off with this sort of cultural messaging about like stay young, stay youthful.
Yeah.
Because everyone deserves to feel confident and beautiful no matter the age they're at. I did see a great headline about how Pamela Anderson had been voted the most beautiful woman in the world after she showed up makeupless to some event, some sort of red carpet something. And I thought, okay, well, I might not agree with that, but more power to you. I support that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Alicia Keys and the makeupless stuff. It's just anytime you reject the status quo to do something that is more authentic to yourself, I support it.
Yeah. I think it goes back to the authenticity, right? And like really being seen, because we kind of can use makeup and what we put on as like a way to hide, even though we are trying to like, look at me. You can kind of argue on both sides. But yeah, the Pamela Anderson thing really grabbed me. And what I will say, I've really on purpose, and this isn't just in this world of aging, but also in all parts of life, I really try and diversify who I follow. And so on social media.
Yeah.
And so she's been one of them. Paulina Poroskova was a model I loved back in the day. And she is, just had 2 hip replacement surgery. And so I thought that was really interesting. And, again, like not hiding, not trying to be something that she isn't at her age. And I mean, there's so many different wonderful, amazing women out there that are like 50s, 60s, 70s and beyond. So I think it's just really cool to kind of, I think about the messages I'm receiving, and on purpose trying to take in versus just unconsciously coming my way.
Yeah.
That is one thing I think I find to be refreshing when it comes to thinking about who I'm looking up to.
You've cultivated this little like group of allies on the aging journey.
Yeah.
I like that. That's really nice. I think too, there's something to be said about talking about aging. There's so many topics we don't talk about. Like we were discussing earlier this week, like when my mom sort of talks about some of the things that she's going through as she ages, maybe in my mind, I'm like, oh gosh, like I'm too young. But then I think, no, I need you to tell me these things because it gives me a very realistic perspective of what aging will be like.
Yeah.
I come from you. So the likelihood is I may have a similar trajectory to you in my mother's perspective.
Yeah.
But like, I want to know. We hear all the bad or we hear all the good. We don't get a good balance of things.
Yeah.
I think that's very important.
And when you say balance, it makes me think of like how important it is not to overly index and worry that if like something bad might happen to us, but like learn from it as something that, you can only do your best.
Mm-hmm.
There will be things. I think that's the other piece of it too. When it comes to like mindfulness, it has been really helpful for me to embrace is it knowing that this body will break down.
Yeah.
There's no stopping it. There's no magic pill. There's no magic thing. So how, again, do we reckon with that and, still live your life knowing that things are going to shift and change and rearrange?
Yeah, I love it. We should put that on a t-shirt. Things will shift and change and rearrange.
And, it's like you go and talk about your mother, that I think is so interesting. Now I'm hitting this age of, and I have been for a while, and I think there isn't a lot of conversation around it, is like, is it perimenopause? Is it menopause? I don't know. I'm thinking all these like interesting symptoms that are coming to me. And I'm all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, is this a menopause thing?
Yeah.
And it's been interesting talking to my mom. She, is in her 80s. So there's part of her that's like, I don't remember. But then there's another part of her of like, well, I don't know. These things just happen. And so, our generation is now coming going, wait a minute, we want more studies to be done on this. We need more research for, women's health. So it's a real interesting time in my life in this body where I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? And so that is, I think, a process that's really interesting to how do you work with yourself, but how do you be in relationship with other people to learn, to investigate, and to
drown out the things that probably aren't relative.
Yeah.
I think about, you said perimenopause. I clearly am in that age group because I keep getting served ads on Instagram from influencers. Are you suffering from these symptoms? And the symptoms are super generic. Like, are you having trouble sleeping? Are you waking up at night? Do you feel tired? And I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I have all these things. And then I'm like, hold on, wait a second. I need it. Like you said, don't over-index and worry. What's the joke? Like, oh, if we WebMD your symptoms, we're all going to die tomorrow. Sometimes when information is shared from a place not necessarily of genuine care, it's shared in such a way that like, I'm going to get as many people as possible versus I'm going to publish this study and the people who want it will find it. Sometimes social media, especially when it comes to aging, can be that way because there is such a booming market for
100%
beauty things and well-being. It's like everything has become so commercialized.
Well, and new businesses are being built around it. So if you think back, I want to say 10, maybe 15 years, there's more fertility clinics and more fertility and women's health. And now because they know this is women, we have a lot of, this is good. We finally need this stuff to be created for us, but there's a lot of buying power. So it always kind of comes back. That's the thing, is always kind of like, getting clear on, what's important to you. Is this something I need? Or is this something that's being sold to me and making me realize, like, no, you do need this because we are in fear of not getting older or in fear of like this body breaking down.
Yeah.
So that's the part I think that gets a little dicey and a little tricky.
Yeah. Question the source.
But it's so easy. We could all kind of get hooked in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just, something to kind of, I think both of us kind of watch for and think of as we navigate our way on social media.
Yeah.
and in media.
So what are some of the things that you do to stay proactive about well-being?
Gosh, I mean, I'm so thankful that when I was younger, my parents really invested in activities. So dance and playing softball. So I, although I'm not on an organized team anymore, I think that's something I've always sought out, moving my body in some way and just for the sake of knowing it's a healthy thing to do. So I think continuing to do that, it's shifted and changed over the years. Here I love hiking and walking. I do stretching every day. I used to really been into a yoga practice for flexibility. Now I think I'm really aware of mobility when it comes to my shoulder. Even when I think it was like late 30s, I started having some knee issues and realizing I was doing a lot of stairs and stuff, how to like properly engage my glutes. And so going to some physical therapy. So learning more about the mechanics of my body and doing different things, exercises that are more about helping the body stay open and limber. And I remember when I took yoga for the very first time, I realized the other day I was doing the math. It was 20 years ago. I started in 2004. I was like, wow. And I'm so thankful I started with two ladies that now it's so beautiful to see. They are, I think, approaching 60 or maybe in their 60s. And so much of what they said is like, really invest in the health of your hands and your feet and the alignment when you're doing your practice, because that will carry you through life. So, right, walking, being able to open and grab and touch, right? So I'm just like, wow, I'm so thankful for that message that really got like dialed in. Yeah, so I think it's always like looking at like everything in balance. And I think also the other thing is your mind. Really working with my mind has been a really good investment from a mindfulness perspective because as, not overly, again, I'm human, but starting to see things in a way where I'm not overly attached and also looking for ways that I can accept myself more and accept this body as it changes. It's not easy. I am way far from perfect from it, but the mind is something, knock on wood, if I am lucky to live this life this way, the mind will be something that will continue to be sharp as I age.
Something you said just reminded me of like the whole conversation we had at the top of this episode, working to accept yourself.
Mm.
Like, I think that's very inherent to who we are as humans. And the messages we get are like, you right now as you are not acceptable from an aging perspective. I think that's the fight that we see.
Yeah.
That's the pressure we feel. It's an acceptance thing. I don't know why I didn't sort of connect those two before this.
That's the real tension.
Yeah. And so then therein lies our willpower struggle, right? Do I give in? Like, what do I do? How do I navigate? And like, where do I want to sort of put my own flag in the ground? From a health and well-being perspective, flexibility and mobility, absolutely. I think the difficulties that I have in weight training come from inflexibility, specifically in my ankles. I cannot get into a deeper squat because my ankles are so awful. So my trainer and I are really working hard on that. I thought it was my hips, but no, it's definitely my ankles. My hips are fine, thank God. But like it's my ankles. So it's flexibility, mobility, doing small things. Like we joked in the 2000s, like the wear sunscreen sort of graduation speech.
Oh, yeah.
I took that to heart. I am religious about wearing sunscreen every season of the year.
Agreed. Same.
I feel like it's given me a really good foundation. Now, I love the sun. Don't get me wrong. I'm out there. I'm tanning. I'm doing all the things. But I'm also always wearing sunscreen. So I think it can be small things. It doesn't have to be big practices. It doesn't have to be like total mindset changes. It can just be small things, little by little, that sets you up for a better tomorrow.
And you're also reminding me, flossing.
Yeah, right?
I resisted as a child. I'm like, I hate that. But oh man, I have noticed the difference it makes.
That's true. These small things sort of do help us avoid some significant health challenges, hopefully, down the road. Doesn't mean that it doesn't mean we're immune to all the things.
Yeah.
Because we have had some significant health challenges. How have you seen those challenges impact your lifestyle or your self-care routines?
I mean, I mentioned a few of them earlier, like my knees that I had a problem with, my shoulder most recently, my eyes. I mean, that's just something that has, I inherited through DNA. Both my parents were in glasses early, so had to embrace that, getting used to contacts. I did LASIK eye surgery. I think it was a good solid 12-ish years ago. And now I'm back in glasses and my eyes have been so dry, a side effect. Who knew?
I'm grateful now that I know that because I'll never do it.
Yeah. And there is a certain age too. They do talk about, your eyes I think you're hitting closer to 40, your eyes are going to start to shift and change. So LASIK does not guarantee 100% great vision as you go through. There's always going to be some trade-offs, but I had 12 lovely years of being able to see without glasses, and that was life-changing. So, we have to live life too.
We all make choices.
Yeah, you make choices. And then I think, the other thing who I've been in my family, I talk so much about being like the middle child of like a larger family. I have seen a lot of, and it might have been, the generation, but a lot of folks that were sedentary in my family, right? And so seeing a lot of their issues, whether it be the inflammation or mobility and seeing, and I've heard when I worked in the health tech industry, how there was a phrase that they said, sitting is a new smoking.
Yeah.
So that is something I see just keep moving. And then, their diet is a huge portion of that too, and again, not perfect at it, but doing my best to, seek out things that are better for me.
My grandfather in like the 60s was like so ahead of the curve, my mom will say, because he had them like drinking wheatgrass and he was doing all this mobility and strength training.
Wow.
And so interesting because my grandfather would say he didn't get old until he turned like 88.
Is this your great-grandfather?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Because another picture just came to mind. It was really beautiful. I spent one birthday, it wasn't birthday, it was a new year, a couple years back out in Vouliagmeni, which is by the coast, those of you that don't know here, in Greece, outside of Athens. And I was like, oh, it's a nice warm day. So I'm like, I'm going to go down by the water and put my bathing suit on just to get some sun with sunscreen, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But oh my gosh, these ladies that were out in their bathing suits and they were like, had to be 70s on up. Not only were they in their swimsuits, but they were swimming
In January.
in January
Wow.
in the water. And I believe there's so much that they talk about. Greece is one of the areas, I think Ikaria specifically has the blue zone.
Mm-hmm.
And they've done a lot of research about the people that live to be over 100. What are some of the elements? So like what you're talking about your great grandfather doing and people like this, when I see this, I'm like, that is inspiration and a reminder to be like, keep going.
We've spoken in the past about how older people here in Greece aren't pushed to the wayside. Like the yayades are out, dressed to the nines, getting coffee with their friends. They're parading up and down Ermul just like the young kids are. They're like out and living their lives. Sometimes I think in the US, we can sort of think, okay, you get to a certain age and like, okay, we'll put you in a home. Like you're expected to live a certain type of way.
Or you just stay in your lane and this is what you do for your age.
Yeah, yeah. And so I love being able to see a different type of older experience here. And then maybe the world is changing too, because we are seeing a lot of post-retirement industry businesses pop up, targeting people who are traveling the world. So it's like maybe this whole narrative of aging is slowly changing. Like your life doesn't end at 60. You have so much vitality left. The healthier we are, the longer we live. I don't know, it's sort of an exciting thing, especially for me. I see my parents living their best lives, even though I know once I came along, it was the beginning of their best life. But like they're just enjoying life together as themselves. We're friends. They're healthy. Thank God. Like all of these things. I look at them and I think, okay, getting older isn't going to be so bad.
Yeah. And I love it. I was just on a weekend trip with my mother-in-law.
She's so cool.
I mean, this woman has such life to live.
She does.
We were joking about how she's in her glow up era. But it's true. She's out there. She showed up in the cutest, like what's it called? Like one-armed bathing suit.
Oh, yeah.
Not strapless, but like on one
shoulder.
arm. One shoulder. Thank you. Oh my God. She was just too cute. I'm like, get back in the water. I need to take your photo.
Influencers in the wild. It is true though. We said it earlier, this sort of like group of allies, whether they know it or not.
Yeah.
These people we look up to. I look up to you. I can't tell you the number of conversations I've had with friends we've met. And they're like, oh, so we're all in our 30s? No.
We have an outlier over here in the corner.
We have an outlier. And they're like, no way. There's no way Landra's not in her 30s. And I'm like, yeah, bro, it's true. It's true.
You know, that's what's funny is I'm undercover. No. But what's funny, though, is I was going back to the weekend I spent with Angela, my mother-in-law. We were in a shop and I saw these shoes that were like very reminiscent of like the 90s. And I was like, I totally had those shoes. And I said it out loud. I was like, oh my God, I had those shoes just like this, like in 95. And the woman working in the shop, sweetest woman, goes, I was born in 1995.
Stop.
And I was like, oh my God. And I had one of those moments where I remember being the young girl that somebody else would say that. And I'm like, they're like, how old are you? And I was like, whoop. And it was like, I laughed. I didn't feel offended. She didn't say it to me to feel, I just was like, wow, okay, this is a milestone in my life.
Right.
And going back to that sense of like, I'm proud to be here. I'm blessed to be here. But it was kind of comical.
It's like, why fight it, right?
Yeah.
There are going to be millions of people born after us. Why fight the natural progression of things?
Yeah. And I think if anything, it just shows, and again, it's all perspective, because when you're younger, I remember this too, I would sing a song and I don't even know, can't think of one right now on the radio. And my mom or dad would say, oh, but this is a remake.
Yes.
And I'd be like, no, this is new.
Oh, it was like Paul McCartney a few years ago did a song with somebody. And all the young kids were like, who's this old guy? Who's this old guy, Paul McCartney? Like, who is that?
Uh-huh.
It's like, I had a friend whose mom used to say, there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
Like, we're all just living like the last 40 years over and over and over
Recycling,
again.
yeah. It's so funny. Or like when hearing like vintage or different things, retro, what that means to me and what that means to somebody who's in their like teens or 20s. So it's funny, it's kind of, you find the the cyclical nature of life and in things. And it's interesting. And I think it does keep life interesting.
It's true. And I think perspective is one of the great things that age affords you, especially when you do feel this sort of pressure. Like when you think about the perceptions of beauty and how the perception of beauty so greatly impacts our feelings of self-worth. Like, can you think of you mentioned earlier magazines and things, but can you think of specific societal pressures that you have encountered or people you know have spoken about, and how you have challenged yourself to embrace or reject those feelings?
Yeah, it's funny going back to the magazine things because I mentioned I don't know what it was. I just was captivated by, I think, no. If I think about it now, I do know what it is. It was like the seduction of like going somewhere, like traveling and trying on beautiful clothes. And like, I don't know, there was just something really beautiful about that. So I was like, oh, modeling would be so cool. And so I had a wonderful friend that took some photos of me that was into fashion photography. So it was really fun. And I found an agency in San Francisco. So I was like, not very big time, little time, but
Wow.
still. Yeah. And I would go and I do, different things like fashion shows and little things here and there. They were all just very local. But I mean, I won't even tell you like my stats, but I was very thin, and I thought very healthy thin. And I was always told I was on the bigger side and then I needed to lose weight. So then I was like, okay, so I was eating more healthy. I was working out more and it wasn't thin enough. And then I just realized, and this was also in the era of like, they called it heroin chic.
Oh, yeah.
So like Kate Moss and a lot of those models that just naturally are like a lot smaller in nature, but then also, I don't know what their lifestyle was, I want to say, but it was interesting. So I just knew it was impossible. I was never going to be that person. I was never going to keep up. So I just was like, I'm out of that race. I'm not going to fall into those. And I'm so lucky that I didn't, I didn't have, luckily, just any, issues with my body that I want to push myself beyond. So I feel really grateful for that. It might have come from my own kind of, don't tell me what to do, or like, okay, fine, I don't need to be a part of that. And as I say that, a model that has come on my radar in the last, 5-10 years is Ashley Graham.
Oh, yes.
She is just a lovely human being, not only beautiful, but also just a smart businesswoman. She has a podcast. She's out there lifting up other women. And why I mentioned her name, because in the beauty industry, in the modeling agency, she's considered a big girl. But my goodness, she represents like so much of a real woman in the world. And I'm just like amazed to see how far we've come. And yet there's still so much farther we need to come in these industries and in perception of beauty. But that's one kind of just big one that came to mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like, who doesn't go through adolescence and feel that sort of pressure around weight? I went to my first Weight Watchers meeting at age 12. Like, I think back on that now and just think sort of what sort of relationship that set me up for in terms of hating my body and like, well, an odd relationship with food and all of this sort of stuff and not knowing how to work through it or how to talk about it. It's really like sort of foundational things at that age. And that's the age that a lot of this messaging is targeting. I think Ashley Graham is an icon. I mean, she just broke barriers left and right. I've always really respected the things that I know, had to go through in order to stand that ground.
Yeah.
When I was working in TV, everyone was always like, you should be on TV. You should be an anchor. You should be all these things. I didn't want to deal with the pressure of being on TV because we would have consultants come in twice a year and they'd tell our on-camera talent, like, you can't wear that because your arms are too fat.
Oh, wow.
You can't wear those types of dresses because your butt is too big. Like, they would be really disgustingly negative. And I was like, I don't want that. I'm already sort of on a precipice. Like, I don't need that sort of pressure in my life. Was I kind of scared? Probably. But I also knew that that wasn't for me. Like, I didn't want to put myself in that position.
Yeah, I think we share that. It's like, that's just not the game I'm going to play. Yeah.
My brother had this friend growing up who was an only child. And so I sort of became the adoptive daughter for his mom. And she used to say this thing to me that, like, now looking back on it, I think it's really damaging. But she'd say, you have to suffer to be beautiful.
Oh, wow.
And it didn't occur to me to question that until my niece was born. And something snapped in my brain and I thought, I will never want to say that to her.
Mm.
I never want her to think that her beauty is something she has to suffer for. Because I think that sets you up for a lifetime of hurt.
Oh my goodness, of course. And I think we both are just wanting to not only be role models for younger women, but also like encourage all women at different stages of their lives. But thinking about that, what advice would you offer to younger women or just women in general who are thinking about aging and their futures?
Question the source of the information you receive, but also question the source of the feeling within you. Is it something inherent to who you are that you believe, or is it like cultural programming? This was something I went through really specifically, like in my late 20s, where I sort of started to peel back the layers and question why I felt this way about certain things, why I wanted certain things. And it helped me get to this place of, this is me, this is not me. And I started to let go of all the stuff that wasn't me. And it helped me sort of cultivate, I think, a series of decisions that led me to this day and to a life that is very much my own. I am more confident in my body than I've ever been in my life. I am so happy with who I am. It doesn't mean that I don't feel like there's progress to be made, but I'm so happy. I love myself.
Mm.
On the majority of days I love myself, I'm always happy to be me. I wouldn't be anyone else. And I think that came from this idea of finding out where there was tension in my being and identifying if I was fighting an idea that wasn't my own.
Mm. I love that so much.
What about you? The piece of advice you would give?
I mean, I think it's what, I kind of been saying before, a bit like punctuating is don't look at aging or the future as something that's scary. Just like you said, like be in the moment, enjoy where you are, enjoy what your body can do. I think there's also something as well. Yoga taught me this a lot. I remember of like just being in awe sometimes and telling my body, like, thank you. Like, wow, these legs that carry you, these feet, like I mentioned, the hands and your feet. So looking at your body from, it's easy, right, to kind of pick and kind of go, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that. Actually, I'd ask you the next time that happens to flip it and say, but what do I love? And it's a mindset thing, right, to kind of look at that differently. So, of course, think prevention for sure, but just remember that, aging is a process and that the body will get sick and break down, but just do your best along the way and along this journey.
I read once that you should spend time, this is going to be wild. Yeah, read once you should spend time standing in front of the mirror naked and getting very comfortable with looking at your own body.
Yeah.
And telling yourself, I love you. I love you. Like you said, what do I love? I love my hair. I love my hips. I love my eyes. I love these hands who've carried babies and carried groceries to help people. Like this idea of just being comfortable in your own skin. Because it is the only skin you will have.
Yeah. I love what you said about, so saying more about the body part. These hips that have, carried a baby or these arms that have carried groceries. That to me is something that's like the action that goes along with that.
These feet that have allowed me to run marathons or climb Lake Avitos or have taken me around the world. This heart that has been broken and yet continues to beat. All of these things are beautiful.
Yes.
And it's the experience of aging that I think allows us to really see the beauty in things beyond what they look like.
Yes. And also, I want to call in the quote that I think I told you the other day I love so much by Mark Twain. He says, wrinkles should mark merely where smiles have been. And so for me, because I love laughing, I mean, that to me is like medicine and something that just like, I'm so glad I do every day. But when I see these crow's feet and I'm kind of pointing to my eyes and like around my lips and my nose, it may be call me crazy because I know some people are like, is that really true? But it really doesn't bother me. I really think it is like an expression. And I think of some of these lines, sure, there's some that kind of can drive me crazy, like the one that's like the one line in the middle of my eyes when I frown. That's the one where I'm like, oh, that one's getting deeper. But whatever, this like the wrinkles on my face are like a map of my journey. And I just think that is so interesting. I think of other people that way when I see wrinkles.
Our hope for you this week is that you find opportunities to laugh with your full heart and love the skin that you're in.
We wrapped up another serving of Biscuits and Sunshine, and we wouldn't be here without our amazing team of supporters and cheerleaders. Thank you all for your support. If you're listening to us on Spotify, make sure to fill out the survey question associated with this episode. We love your feedback.
If you love what we're serving up, be sure to subscribe and rate us on your favorite streaming platform. Also, head over to Instagram and give us a follow at Biscuits and Sunshine, all spelled out. This is Biscuits and Sunshine with Callie and Landra.